Welcome to another deep dive with us.
Yeah.
And we are going to be tackling a very interesting legal case from the Philippines.
Yes, we are.
So buckle up, folks.
Buckle up.
Because this is one with some twists and turns.
Lots of twists and turns.
And it all starts with a motorcade, a disputed election.
Yes.
And a very interesting question that went all the way to the Supreme Court.
That's right.
When exactly does campaigning actually become illegal?
All right, so I think what's so fascinating about this case is that it really hinges on the very definition of a candidate.
Okay.
And what exactly constitutes premature campaigning.
Right.
So we are diving into excerpts from the Supreme Court decision itself.
Okay.
In the case of Rosalinda Penera versus the Commission on Elections, or COMELEC for short, and Edgar Andanar.
Gotcha.
And to make things even more interesting,
oh boy,
we also have a couple of dissenting opinions from Justice Chico-Nazario and Justice Abad. And these disagreements, I think, really expose some of the complexities and potential loopholes that we see in election law.
Okay, so set the stage for us here.
Okay.
What exactly happened in this election?
So picture this.
Right.
The year is 2007.
Okay.
The setting is a mayoral election in Monica, Surigao del Norte, Philippines.
Gotcha.
Our main contenders are Rosalinda Penera and Edgar Andanar.
All right.
Now, before Penera even officially filed her Certificate of Candidacy, or COC, she held this massive motorcade.
Yeah, this wasn't just any motorcade, right? This was like a full-blown spectacle.
Oh, yeah, exactly. We're talking trucks, motorcycles, a sea of balloons, music blaring, even candy being tossed to the crowds.
Oh, wow.
So it definitely grabbed attention.
Yeah.
But it also landed Penera in some hot water.
So was this just like, I don't know, a very enthusiastic early celebration, or was there like a strategy behind this?
Well, that's where the legal battle really begins. Okay. You see, Penera hadn't actually filed her COC yet. Okay. Which officially, declares her candidacy. Right. And Andanar, her opponent, saw an opportunity here.
Oh, boy.
He filed a disqualification petition with COMELEC, claiming that Penera was engaging in premature campaigning.
Right, and he had a point because, I mean, Philippine law is pretty specific about when campaigning can begin.
Yeah, very specific.
Okay.
So let's kind of break down the law a little bit here.
Right.
What exactly defines a candidate? Yeah. And when is campaigning actually allowed?
Yeah, good questions.
So Philippine election law, specifically Section 79A of the Omnibus Election Code, defines a candidate as someone who has formally filed their COC. And Section 80 of that same code prohibits campaigning outside the designated campaign period. Right. So Penera hadn't filed that COC yet.
So she was kind of walking this tightrope, trying to generate this buzz without technically becoming a candidate under the law.
Right.
Did that strategy work?
Well, we'll see.
Okay.
So what did COMELEC have to say about all of this?
Yeah.
Initially, they sided with Andanar.
Okay.
They disqualified Penera.
Wow.
Arguing that regardless of her official candidate status, this motorcade, was a clear attempt to sway voters before the official campaign period.
It sounds like a classic case of trying to exploit a loophole.
Yeah, it really does.
But she didn't just take this lying down, right?
No, she did not. Penera appealed this decision.
Okay.
Took the case all the way to the Supreme Court.
Wow.
Her defense.
All right, let's hear it.
She wasn't officially a candidate when that motorcade rolled through Pound.
Right.
So it all came down to the very definition of that word and the timing of her actions.
Okay, so the Supreme Court had to decide.
Yes.
Was she simply a citizen expressing herself?
Right.
Or a candidate, very cleverly skirting the rules?
Exactly.
All right, what happened?
Okay, so get this. The Supreme Court overturned COMELEC's decision and ruled in favor of Penera.
Hold on, so she was in the clear, even with that massive pre-campaign period motorcade?
Yeah.
How is that possible?
So the Supreme Court, in their majority opinion, stated that since Penera had not formally submitted her COC at the time of the motorcade, she wasn't technically a candidate.
So they basically just stuck to a very strict literal interpretation of the law.
Exactly. Even though the spirit of the law seemed to be in question.
Okay, that seems pretty controversial.
It is.
Yeah.
Were there any strong reactions to this decision?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
This is where the dissenting opinions come in.
Okay.
Justice Chico-Nazario, for example, argued that the majority's interpretation of the law was far too literal.
Okay.
He thought they missed the point entirely. So he thought that they were focusing on the technicality of this COC filing.
Yes.
Instead of, the obvious intent behind that motorcade.
Exactly.
So he was concerned with preventing, future loopholes like this.
Yes.
And upholding the spirit of fair elections rather than just getting caught up in the technicalities.
That's a great way to put it.
And what about Justice Abad?
So Justice Abad's dissent took a slightly different approach.
Okay.
But it was equally fascinating.
All right, let's hear it.
He argued that Section 80 of the Omnibus Election Code should apply to everyone.
Really?
Regardless of whether they filed their candidacy or not.
So to him, no campaigning means no campaigning.
Pretty much.
Interesting.
Yeah, and he wasn't just concerned about Penera's actions specifically,
right,
but the potential impact of this ruling on future elections.
I see. So he was thinking about the bigger picture here.
Exactly.
So he was worried that allowing these pre-campaign activities would basically just undermine the whole point of having a designated campaign period.
Right, like what's to stop well-funded candidates from constantly campaigning under the guise of not yet being official candidates?
That raises some serious concerns about fairness and transparency.
Absolutely.
It's fascinating how this, relatively straightforward case about a motorcade has become this much deeper conversation about the very essence of democracy.
It has.
So we have the majority opinion focusing on the letter of the law, and then these two dissenting opinions arguing that the intention and the potential consequences really matter.
Very much so.
But you mentioned earlier that there's another twist to this.
There is.
Something about ballot printing.
Yes.
We are going to need to unpack that.
We will.
But I think first let's take a quick pause here.
That's good.
Just to kind of process what we've learned so far.
Yeah, this is a lot to absorb.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what are your initial thoughts on this case? Does the Supreme Court's decision kind of sit well with you, or are you feeling a little uneasy about it?
I'm still kind of processing, to be honest.
Yeah.
It seems like they were so focused on that technicality.
The QOC?
Yeah, that they maybe kind of inadvertently created this loophole for clever candidates.
That's right.
Yeah.
Very clever candidate.
So we'll come back and unpack all that. I'm still processing the Supreme Court's decision, to be honest.
Yeah.
It seems like they were so focused on the technicality of the COC filing that they might have inadvertently created this loophole for, clever candidates.
Yeah, and I think that's really the crux of the issue here.
Right.
And why these dissenting opinions are so important in this case. They force us to think beyond that very narrow legal interpretation and grapple with those broader implications.
Yeah.
Justice Chico-Nazario, in particular, really highlights the danger of, clinging to the letter of the law while ignoring the spirit of the law.
He seemed especially concerned that the majority opinion could set a dangerous precedent.
Right.
Making it easier for candidates with, a lot of resources to engage in these kinds of pre-campaign activities.
Yeah, exactly like saying, sure, you can't officially campaign yet,
right,
but feel free to have this massive motorcade with all the bells and whistles as long as you haven't filed that one piece of paper.
Yeah, it's a loophole big enough to drive a truck through.
Or a whole fleet of trucks in Penera's case.
Yeah, and Justice Abad's argument kind of adds another layer to this.
It does.
His point wasn't just about Penera, but about how this ruling could undermine the purpose of having a designated campaign.
Section 80 of the Omnibus Election Code, which prohibits campaigning outside the designated period, should apply to anyone who wants to run for office, regardless of whether they filed their COC.
Interesting.
So his concern was about leveling the playing field, ensuring that everybody has a fair shot.
So imagine a world where wealthy, well-connected individuals could just constantly campaign.
Yeah, build up that name recognition, build up that momentum.
And those with fewer resources wouldn't stand a chance.
Right. It would create a system where elections are basically pre-decided.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So Justice Abad understood that the very foundation of a fair and democratic election rests on the principle of equal opportunity.
Right.
The Penera case, in his view, really threatened to chip away at that foundation.
It's crazy how this, seemingly straightforward case about a motorcade has spiraled into this much deeper conversation about the very essence of democracy.
Yeah.
But You mentioned earlier that there's another twist.
There is.
This thing about ballot printing.
Oh, yeah.
Can you refresh my memory on what exactly?
So remember we talked about Section 15 of RA 8436 as amended by RA 9369.
Okay.
So this section deals with deadlines for filing COCs, but it also introduces a little wrinkle that directly impacts the Penera case.
So what does it say?
Essentially, it states that someone is considered a candidate for the purpose of printing ballots.
All right.
Even before the official campaign period begins.
Okay.
This is done for logistical reasons.
Right.
To give the Commission on Elections enough time to actually prepare those ballots.
So you're telling me that someone could be considered a candidate in the eyes of the law.
Yes.
For one purpose, ballot printing, but not for another, campaigning.
Yeah.
How does that even make sense?
Well, that's kind of a head-scratcher, isn't it?
It is.
And it's this ambiguity that the Penera case throws into sharp relief.
So the Supreme Court just chose to focus on that strict definition of candidate.
Yeah, someone who has filed their COC.
Which allowed them to rule in Penera's favor.
That's right.
But the dissenting judges were like, no, you're missing the point here.
They thought the Supreme Court was so focused on the technicality of the COC that they overlooked the reality of what was happening.
They felt like she was clearly campaigning.
Right.
Regardless of her official status at the time.
Regardless of whether she had filed that piece of paper or not.
It goes back to the whole intent versus technicality thing.
Exactly.
So this case really just highlights how challenging it can be to interpret the law. Especially when you're dealing with something as complex and nuanced as elections.
It really is. It's like trying to solve a puzzle.
Yeah.
Where the pieces don't quite fit together.
So I think we need to analyze what could be the potential consequences of this Penera ruling.
Yeah.
Explore whether this has led to, I don't know, calls for reform or amendments to the Philippine election law.
Absolutely. Because if this loophole remains open, it could have a significant impact on future elections.
So it makes you wonder, like, what happened after the Penera case?
Right.
Does it lead to any changes in Philippine election law?
Yeah, it's a great question, and definitely one that many legal experts and lawmakers were asking after the Supreme Court handed down its decision.
So did it lead to any, like, immediate legislative changes, or?
Well, not immediately. The Penera case didn't lead to any sweeping changes right away.
Right.
But it definitely sparked a lot of debate and discussion.
So it was like a wake-up call, in a way.
Yeah, I think so.
Highlighting the need to, like, re-examine the existing laws, address those loopholes that we talked about that could be exploited by well-resourced candidates.
You know, some argued that the definition of candidate itself needed to be revisited.
Okay.
Like maybe someone should be considered a candidate from the moment they publicly announced their intention to run, regardless of whether they filed that COC.
That seems logical.
Yeah, it would close that gap.
Right.
Prevent people from engaging in these pre-campaign activities.
Right, under the radar.
Exactly.
It wouldn't be about the technicalities.
Right.
It would be about recognizing, like, the intent.
The reality of their actions.
Yeah, exactly.
And there were also discussions about strengthening those regulations surrounding pre-campaign activities, making it crystal clear what's permissible and what actually crosses the line.
Regardless of a person's official candidate status.
Right. It's all about leveling that playing field and protecting the integrity of the process.
So did any of those discussions translate into, like, concrete action?
That's the question.
Yeah.
Were there any actual amendments to the Omnibus Election Code? There have been some amendments and revisions to the Omnibus Election Code since the Penera case back in 2009.
Right.
But the core issues that were highlighted remain relevant today.
I see.
So that definition of candidate and those regulations surrounding pre-campaign activities continue to be subjects of debate, discussion in legal and political circles.
So the Penera case kind of cast a long shadow, in a way.
I think so.
Over Philippine elections.
Yeah.
Even though it was focused on this one very specific incident.
Right.
It kind of brought these systemic issues to light that haven't been fully resolved.
Exactly.
So it makes you wonder what impact this has had on subsequent elections.
Right. And it's hard to measure that exact impact.
Right.
But the Penera case definitely serves as a reminder of the potential for, ambiguity and manipulation within the law.
It's like a cautionary tale.
It is.
Encouraging vigilance.
Yeah.
Both from lawmakers who need to refine those rules and from citizens who need to hold their elected officials accountable.
Absolutely.
It's a reminder that the law isn't static.
Right.
It's like a living, breathing system.
Yeah, a system that needs to be reevaluated.
Right.
Adapted to address these new challenges.
And prevent future loopholes.
Yes, exactly.
And it's also, I mean, it's really a testament to the importance of those dissenting opinions.
It is.
Even though Justices Chico-Nazario and Abad didn't sway the majority in this case.
They didn't.
Their arguments forced everyone to really kind of examine these issues.
That's right. They raised those crucial questions about fairness, intent, and the broader implications for democracy.
And those are questions that still resonate today.
Yeah, they do.
This whole deep dive has been so eye-opening.
It has.
I feel like I've learned so much about election law.
Good.
Not just in the Philippines, but like worldwide.
Right, the challenges that all democracies face.
Yeah, in ensuring those fair and transparent elections.
It's been a fascinating journey, hasn't it?
It has.
We started with this seemingly simple question.
About a motorcade.
About a motorcade.
And we've ended up like exploring these fundamental principles of democracy.
The role of the judiciary.
Yeah, the importance of vigilance.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up here, what are some key takeaways you would want our listeners to really reflect on?
Well, I think first and foremost, the Penera case shows us that seemingly minor legal details can have really big consequences.
Right.
It highlights the need for clear and unambiguous laws that leave no room for misinterpretation or manipulation.
It's not just about the letter of the law.
Right.
We have to consider the spirit of the law.
The potential for abuse.
Yeah. And secondly, this case reminds us that citizens play a crucial role in upholding these democratic values.
We have to be informed, engaged, and willing to hold our officials accountable.
We can't just assume that the system will take care of itself.
We have to actively participate
in shaping it. And finally, this case is just a reminder of how important dissent and critical thinking are.
It is.
Justice Chico-Nazario and Justice Abad challenged the status quo and forced us to confront these uncomfortable truths.
They remind us that the law is not this set of rigid rules, but a constantly evolving framework that must adapt to these changing circumstances and values.
This case may have started with a motorcade in the Philippines.
It did.
But it raises these questions about fairness,
transparency,
the fragility of democracy.
Yeah, all over the world.
It's a reminder that democracy is a work in progress.
It is.
It's something we need to constantly nurture and protect.
Well said.
Well, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive.
We have.
This has been an incredible exploration.
It has.
And I hope our listeners feel equipped to continue pondering these complexities of election law.
Absolutely.
And how to ensure fair and transparent elections.
No matter where they are in the world.
It's been a pleasure diving deep with you.
Likewise. Until next time.